Hello everybody and welcome to a new episode of Your Time Q&A. We try to do this every Wednesday, and if I'm not mistaken, this is the sixth episode today with a webcam here on my laptop. A little bit easier setup. We've got a very interesting question, political question almost, and I explain myself in a minute. Coming from Jason. And Jason in Montreal asks, I have recently gotten into clavichord renditions of my favorite pieces of the Baroque and early classical eras. I was listening to your recordings, and he's pointing, I think, to the B flat minor Prelude and Fugue of Bach. And it seems like your tunings for Bach are very close or exactly equal temperament. Have you tried playing in unequal temperaments, such as the Neidhart or Valotti temperaments that were published and used for keyboard music in Bach's era? Regardless of temperament, it's a pleasure to listen to you play, and I have signed up to the Authentic Sound channel, for which I thank you very much also for your question. As I said in the beginning, there are a few things in the early music scene that people are not talking about. That's on temperaments, that's on tempo choice, and it's a pity because it's a great question. And first of all, I have to congratulate you for having very good ears. That particular recording, I think, is in Valotti, and I stretched a little bit. And by doing that with Valotti, where Valotti basically has 6 pure fifths, starting from F, going downwards, and then the other 6 you tune a little bit smaller. And of course, what's a perfect fifth, even if you just diminish the fifth a little bit, that is still pure to our ears. You will see that in Valotti you will have a much wider margin at the end, and that's actually going to equal temperament. Equal temperament and equal temperament are different things. It would take us too far in this episode, but basically when you tune equal temperament only relating to the fifths, making all fifths on ear a little bit too small, it's different than tuning by a tuning device, where you have a proportional division of all the intervals. And the latter I wouldn't do. Neidhart you're referring to is published in Bach's lifetime. I don't think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that Valotti is second half of the 18th century. So Neidhart is often referred to as one of the big sources, big names on temperate tunings. And in fact, what he did was, I can give 4 versions of temperaments. He starts with the village temperament close to mean tone, and he ended with the equal temperament, which he named the chord temperament. Werkmeister, you have other big name in his early years, favored the temperate tunings. He gave some very useful examples for that. Later on, he moved on with the time in which he lived to equal temperament. So many of these sources go to equal temperament, again, tuned by ears. So it's a pity that we can't talk about it. And even what I have said now, if someone would pick this up and post it on an early music Facebook group, it could mean the end of my career, which is almost non-existent. No, I'm joking, but not completely, because it's something that you really don't talk about, and I don't understand why. It's partly maybe because we dig a little bit in the history and the heritage we got from the 60s and the 70s generations, which we all admire. And that's something you better not touch, but I frankly don't care. I think time has come that we take that element and that aspect of our performances back in hand and just dive into the sources. And then indeed what you see is that the equal temperament, which you really, it's great that you noticed that it was used in Bach's time much more and on a much larger scale. I wouldn't say in every village, but I'm talking on the upper level of musicians on a much wider scale than we today think or we want to believe. Having said all that, if you tune your instrument, it's a matter of taste, and in no way it is possible to have exactly tuned your instrument like the theoretical writers find out. I mean, today my instrument is more towards equal temperament tuned by ears, but I adjust all the time. And if you would ask me in what specific temperament, historically spoken, my clavichord is tuned, I wouldn't even know the answer to that. So I typically would go open the lid of my clavichord and start playing. And if something is a little bit too harsh, but a third is too big, what in equal temperament, of course, is one of the problems, so to say, I just make it smaller and see what happens with the other keys. So I think if you start in a practical way in the temper tuning and you adjust accordingly to what you hear, you're moving up automatically a little bit to equal temperament. If you start with an equal temperament, you move in daily practice to more temper tuning. At the end is a decision whether you prefer a kind of equality of fifths and quarts in the quarter intervals, which can be important, especially in Bach's music, but also later in the second half of 18th century. But also with Bach, if you have two-voiced polyphonic passages, and Bach is always modulating, yeah, it can happen that if you have quarter and fifth intervals in that polyphony, that in a temper tuning, in one sequence they are pure, and the second sequence they are really out of tune, because that's what happens. And if you don't like that, you go more to Valotti equal temperament. It's a matter of taste. If you want to have the thirds to have a special character or to emphasize the character of the tonality, and if you like that, go ahead and do it and present it to the public. So I hope that's a quick answer to your question. And again, we could dive into this for days, and maybe we should one day. And maybe we will do it one day, who knows. But anyway, I hope this was a kind of satisfying answer to your question. Thank you for posting that. So if you have a question, don't hesitate to post it in the comment box. I will read it. We have for several weeks some questions, and we see how this develops. I like being of some service, if you can say it like that, to you, and or just to reflect together with you on some issues. So thank you for watching, and thank you for sharing and subscribing as always, and we see each other next week again. Bye.